won't have too many more nice days like this. Weather's going to be changing drastically before too long. All this censoring that's going on globally, people not being allowed to express their opinions, even if they're stating facts. I came across this a few years ago. I grew up very active in a church. When I went overseas and I came back, stayed with my mother for a short period of time while I worked at a newspaper. I was the guy that picked up the first few papers off the press, rolled them up, labeled them, and mailed them out to subscribers all over the world. When I come home at night, Mother would have church materials she wanted me to study. So I did. About a week or two reading those materials, went over to her one day and I said, "Mother, why do you have me reading this material? This is communist material." She said, "Where do you get that idea?" I said, "Remember back in high school, I was studying communism and I even campaigned against communism in the schools. Some of this material exactly communist teachings." She said, "Well, I wanted you to see it for yourself. This is what our church has done. It's completely reversed its teachings from what you do as a kid." And at that point, I lost interest in the church. Later on, after I moved out here to Texas, I started posting on their church chat boards, their forums, and I argued against what they were claiming as the correct doctrines, the correct teachings. And I said, "You've changed 180 degrees from what it was years ago. Why would you do this? God is supposed to be unchanging, never changing." And eventually I was so disgusted, I actually called for the prophet of the church to step down from his role because he was teaching wrong beliefs. It seemed at that time anything that I had been taught that was right was now wrong, and anything that was wrong was now right. You couldn't say anything against homosexuals because suddenly homosexuality became okay. Now bear in mind, this is still prior to the current movement we have had the last several years where it's been openly accepted. But the point being that it didn't matter what I would say. There was someone in the church that would say I was totally wrong, and I'm not wrong. This is what the church always taught. And they had all these excuses for explaining why the changes were necessary and needed. And they used terms like global community and one world church, one world government, peace, unity. I totally turned my back on the church. Now today, we're in the situation where anything we say is going to be wrong. So many of us have deleted our Facebook pages months or years ago. I had probably 25 public websites. I had to take them all down, let them become inactive, withdrew from all that activity. You just get to the point where you're so beat down from being wrong all the time, it's not worth the problem of talking to the people when no matter what you say, they don't listen. It's just their way or no way. And now here it is where we can't say anything on the social sites. So what are we doing? We're running over to alternative social sites, which are now beginning to be moderated and shut down. Rumble is a good example. Everybody had gone over to Rumble because it was a free platform, and now some of the same people have absolutely turned their back on it because they were being shadow banned. Almost any subject that you bring up these days, you're not safe to talk about it. So shall we discuss religion tonight? Probably not a good idea. Shall we discuss politics? Definitely a bad idea. Shall we discuss public school board meetings? Oh, apparently not a good idea, since if you go to a public school board and you stand up and voice your opinions against the core curriculum or sex education for 5-year-olds and object to the books that are being taught to our little children, then you could be labeled as a terrorist, as an extremist, and the FBI called in. Now that's just ridiculous. So what subjects can we talk? Can we talk about inflation? People are doing it. There's no question we have inflation right now. I just heard a guy a few minutes ago say anything meat or dairy related will be going up sky high for at least the next 1.5 to 2 years. It may become impossible for families to afford milk and eggs, cereal for their children. My goodness, I used to buy boxes of Honey Nut Cheerios, family size. Now when you go and you buy that family size, you could actually put the entire box in the old box. But when you open the box, the cellophane bag that's in there, it's barely half full. What was it I picked up the other day? My daughter likes to eat cheese sticks. So I picked up a package, held in my hand, got about 5 feet down the aisle, that it dawned on me, well, this feels funny. I looked down at them. The little cube, the square-shaped cheese sticks were like they'd been sliced right down through the middle of them. So they were not cheese sticks, they were cheese thins. I put them back, and the prices were the same, mixed right in with the others. So everything. Oh, what was the other one? Soup. The other day I picked up a can of Campbell's soup. I looked at it and I thought, wow, that seemed like an awful small can. And I picked up one of the other cans and set it next to it. The number of ounces has gone way, way down. Price is still high. Prices are not going to come back down, I don't think. What subjects can we discuss? Building supplies. I don't get it. Building supplies are through the roof, so to speak, sky high. Went over to buy a 2x4 here a while back, and the 2x4 was going to cost me as much as a full sheet of plywood would have cost. But when you drive into Lubbock from our town, we are west. When we drive into Lubbock, there are entire acreages that are being built with duplexes and single home structures just crammed up against each other. And it's like that all over Lubbock. Cannot even imagine what people must be paying for a house now. When the cost of a 2x4 is so high, can you imagine the number of 2x4s they use in those buildings? And I have to wonder, are those people buying those houses knowing full well that somewhere down the road their mortgages will probably be forgiven and they will get out of paying for it altogether? Sounds like I have neighbor kids out having fun tonight. What subject can we talk about? Did I ever tell you about the time I owned a horse? Well, it wasn't a horse really, it was a calf. It was a young calf. My neighbor invited me to go to a cattle auction with him. And unbeknownst to me, he had arranged with the other people in the stands to not bid when these two little calves came out. And I bought a calf for $10. Now that was about 1960, $15, $10 for a calf was a good deal. So my neighbor, he bought one too. We took him home, put him down in his cattle pen, went up there and fed that critter every day. Mixed up the powdered milk, put it in the bucket with a big nipple and fed it. Well, my neighbor's calf died the next week, sad to say. Mine, I named him Oscar. Mine got big old tears in his eyes. His eyes started weeping. He got real sickly, and he died. I swore I'd never have another calf again. That was it for me. Of course, my stepdad, he always had one or two calves up in the barn lot. I had to go up and feed them all the time. But he'd butcher them, so we always had steak and roast and ribs, all kinds of meats. We even had so much we'd feed all the neighbors, get all the neighbors out. We'd have a big barbecue. We'd have 5 or 6 separate ice cream freezers, ice cream going, mix in peaches from our peach orchard. My job was pour that ice and salt in there and crank on that thing. Those were good times with our neighbors. Everybody eating and drinking and visiting, smoking cigarettes, drinking beer. I'm sitting out here alone tonight, and I'm thinking, I haven't talked to my neighbor in probably, I'd say, it's been a good 10 months. I think last time I saw them, I said hello to them. So before that, I don't know, maybe it's been 18 months since I had a conversation with him. Like one of my posters said today, neighbors used to get together and visit. Now they don't do it. What can we talk about today? Well, I was going to tell you about that horse I owned one time. Yeah, I did have a horse. It wasn't a horse really, it was a turtle. My buddy and I were down in the woods hunting sparrows. We took our BB guns and went down there and hunt sparrows. Had a Daisy Red Rider. Barely would pleak a bird and knock it off the tree branch. But I found this turtle one day. It wasn't a horse, it was a turtle. And I put him on a backpack and carried him home and built him a little cage and put some water in there. I'd steal Mom's lettuce out of the garden and feed him. And then there in Fort Worth, it's time of the year we'd have these big old June bugs come. I mean, great big things. Bigger jumbo marbles. We'd get out there and pick them up, hit them with bats, and bang them off the side of the house. I used to feed my turtle June bugs, great big June bug. One day I got tired of taking care of him, so I got out my syringe and bottled my formaldehyde, and I shot that turtle up full of formaldehyde, stuck him in a big old jar filled with formaldehyde, put a lid on it, taped it shut, and set it up in my closet, high up on a shelf, had my microscope sitting in front of it. Nobody would see it. One day I heard this blood-curdling scream. My younger brother had gone to the closet. He was prowling around on my shelf. He moved my microscope and he saw that turtle, and the turtle was still moving. And he was screaming bloody murder to Mother, telling on me, Ronnie's got a live turtle out here and he's got it in a jar and it can't breathe and it's still swimming. Those were good times. It reminds me, I used to come home from school walking up the street, and there'd be my mother and my sister and two little brothers, and the neighborhood kids would be out in the front yard, and Mother'd just be screaming, get up here, get up here. What'd I do now? I'm just getting home from school. You get in there and get those snakes. What? I'd say, what are you talking about? You're snakes. You got snakes loose in the house. Well, she was right. I had a couple of coral snakes in a cage, and one of my brothers knocked the lid off, and the snakes got out of the house and scared everybody half to death. They're just harmless snakes. They're not going to hurt you. Oh boy, did I get in trouble for that.